everyone. It's Margaret Manning here with 60 and Me. This is the place where women who are aging beautifully come to be inspired. My guest today is Ora Nadrich. Ora is the founder and president of the Institute for Transformational Thinking. She is a life coach and a mindfulness teacher, and she's the author of a book called Live True, a mindfulness guide to authenticity, and a groundbreaking book that you may have heard of called Says Who. She is a specialist in transformational thinking and self-discovery. I'd love to welcome you here, Ora.
Hi, Margaret. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here. As you know, our community of 60 and Me is women over 60. And, you know, aging in itself is a pretty profound state of being. But I'd love you to talk with us and share the method that you've invented or that you put together to help people at really all ages, but particularly women in our community, deal with the thoughts that come into your mind as you're getting older, dealing with the changes and transformations that you're going through.
Well, my first book, Says Who, How One Simple Question Can Change the Way You Think Forever, is a method that I created for basically questioning the thoughts, which then turn into our core beliefs about ourselves.
Right.
So if you take something like a woman's journey and her journey in aging and evolving, if you will, there are many things that we can tell ourselves that really disrupt that process, which can be, I think, one of the greatest times in a woman's journey. And so the thoughts that we can tell ourselves, whether they're thoughts that we impose on ourselves, or they're the thoughts and beliefs that we've taken in from others or society, or, you know, the billboards that we see around us. You know, we're bombarded. I'm here in Los Angeles, California. I live in an environment where aging is really not dealt with in a way that I think is very all-encompassing. And youth oftentimes reigns supreme, do you know? So specifically to the thoughts that we tell ourselves, and with a method like Says Who, I've combined my books there, is that, let's just say, for example, a thought might be, you know, after 50, I'm never going to feel sensual again. Or, you know, as I get older, nobody's going to desire me, do you know? Or, I mean, we can just fill in the blanks of all the things that women can tell themselves. Who will love me when I'm old and gray? Who will find me sexy when my body no longer is the body that I once had? Right. And so what we want to be mindful of is the awareness of the thoughts that we tell ourselves. And that's really where the Says Who questioning method comes into play. Just that question alone, says who? Who says that I won't be desirable after a certain age? Right. Where did I get that belief that I have embraced and really dictates my life, if you will? We must really question the thoughts that we tell ourselves, because we readily accept a lot of the negative thoughts that are very counterproductive to supporting the best of who we can be at any age, by the way.
Well, this is the thing that's so interesting, because as you get a little older, you've got the wisdom of perspective. So you don't, in your head, you don't think that anyone's judging, and who should be judging. It's your life, it's your experience. But a lot of people take the that self-reflection, which is a great gift as you get older, and turn it into self-criticism. You know, it's kind of like I've got all this potential for embracing the transitions I can go in through. You know, maybe my children have left home, I've maybe been divorced, or I've lost my job. But instead of seeing that as a positive, they start to be self-critical. Like you say, I'm not smart enough, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not whatever. So how do you practically, mindfulness, of course, is a broad category. So give us some practical things that you can do. Give us a scenario and how you might work through it.
Well, with Says Who specifically, because it is a method for questioning and challenging those thoughts that can be disruptive, counterproductive, and actually sabotage our well-being. So there's that. And I think it's an incredibly helpful questioning method, if you will, to address the very things that we tell ourselves that are not supportive. Live True is a mindfulness guide. Mindfulness is having the awareness of who we are in the present moment, and that means the thoughts that we're telling ourselves. So
Right.
an example of applying mindfulness, which is a skill that we all have, by the way, we just need to develop it, and having the mindful awareness of what we are telling ourselves in the moment. So specifically to an undermining negative critical thought would be, oh, I'm not worthy of love. I'm 60, who's going to love me at 60? Catch that just as you say that to yourself. Having the awareness of, wow, that was a negative thought. What good is that thought for me?
Mm-hmm.
How does that thought support my well-being? How does that thought make me feel good about myself? Does it? In the questions of the Says Who method, I have very practical, logical questions of, do I like this thought? Does this thought make me feel better?
Right.
And when you ask yourself those questions, why would a thought that tells you that you're not desirable be a thought that makes you feel better? It does not. So question those thoughts that are negative and be mindfully aware of what you're telling yourself, which you're believing as true, and it's not.
Okay, so the question, this one question that you say in the book can change your life is just simply says who. That when you have a negative thought, I'm not attractive enough, or I'm not wealthy enough, or I'm not skilled enough. All those things you say. Who says who? Who is saying that?
Who and
is that it?
No.
Okay, no, because I want to understand.
But I'm going to give you a very condensed, very abridged version of this questioning method. Although it has 7, I think, very key important questions to ask oneself. The first question is, says who? That is the most important question, because you're stepping into the understanding of that you're telling yourself a thought. And by asking yourself, says who? Who is saying this thought in my mind? You are taking ownership. It is me. I am telling myself that I'm not worthy, that I'm not lovable, that I'm not desirable, that I'm not living my best life, that I'm not sensual, that I'm not all the negative inner self-talk that we tell ourselves.
Right.
You are taking ownership that it is yourself, which, by the way, is not easy to do. Most people want to push away a thought that they tell themselves. They don't want to look at it in the face and say, look at how critical I'm being with myself. Look at how negative I'm being with myself. Look at how unloving I am towards myself. So that first question, Margaret, says who, is the very beginning. It's like opening the door, to owning a negative thought.
Okay, so what about if a person might say, though, that people have been telling me this? I mean, a lot of women live in fairly challenging marriage situations. I mean, don't forget, our generation of women married a lot of times out of high school. 17, 18 years old. We had children when we were young. And so by the time they get to be 60 years old, they have actually had people say, you're whatever, XYZ. So that negative thought may be coming from something that someone has told you. I mean, how do you differentiate someone saying you're not going to get this job because you're too old, with that being something you create? That is the ageism in the world. That's real.
Well,
that's a negative or an issue.
First of all, funny you should say that, because the second question of the Says Who method is, have I heard someone say this thought before?
Okay.
I've worked with I've worked with so many people that have been so held hostage by a thought which is turned into, again, your core beliefs about yourself, that they took on as real, that they heard a mother, father, sister, brother, authority figure, going back, way back in childhood. That's why it's very powerful work to do, to be able to go back. I mean, I've had major breakthroughs with people, major gestalts of some, how the Says Who method was actually born was with a client who came to me who was very at the effect of a belief that her father had, and that they were going to be homeless and out on the streets because he was very unstable with work. This was a grown woman who had been at the effect of a thought that wasn't even her own, that was her father's. Mm-hmm. So once you can identify, I'm not saying it magically just disappears. With a lot of work and a lot of commitment to transformational thinking, you really can let go of thoughts, especially the ones that don't belong to you, that they didn't originate with you, that we took on the beliefs of others that dictated to us who we are. Now, one of the beautiful about getting older is you earn the right to hold the thoughts in your mind that you want. We're no longer little children
We choose.
that are at the we have a choice in the matter. And I say that a lot in both my books. We have a choice to decide which thoughts we want to hold in our mind and which thoughts we want to let go of.
It's a very powerful way of looking at thinking and about transforming the way that the lens that you examine the dialogue, the inner dialogue. But what about stereotypes? I mean, those are things that no one's really said. It's just, well, especially in LA, you must be so aware of the youth culture that permeates the United States, for example. But how do we deal with stereotypes? So it's not even visible. It's just a pulse that surrounds us as older women.
Well, then therefore it's more incumbent upon us to be the gatekeepers of the thoughts that we hold as true. I mean, this isn't something that's just, like I said, you have to be willing to work with yourself. You have to be willing to work with your thoughts. You have to be willing to even do something which I think is very user-friendly. I have a technique in Says Who, which is the release and replace technique. And it's basically releasing a negative thought that does not serve your well-being and replacing it with its positive counterpart. It's like medicine. It's the positive medicine. It's the antidote, if you will. So if you release a thought like, I'm unlovable, and you replace it literally with the thought, I am lovable. I'm advocating for myself. I'm standing up for myself. I love myself enough to utter those words to myself. This becomes a practice. It's like strengthening a muscle, And the more we do it, the more we develop those mental strengths and what I call healthy thinking habits that support our well-being.
Okay, so that's I understand that now the process, and I encourage people to read the book if they want to get these 7 steps or 7 questions. But I'm getting the sort of the gist of what you're approaching, how you're approaching it. But how does mindfulness fit into this? I mean, mindfulness is it's a practice of stilling the mind, staying focused, getting, narrowing down. That sounds to me an interesting counterpoint to the expansiveness that you've just been describing, where there's dialogue and activity in the brain as opposed to stillness and focus. How does mindfulness fit?
Well, mindfulness meditation is that. Mindfulness is just having an awareness. It's not trying to still the mind. It's having an awareness of the activity of the mind. It's not, in meditation, one thinks, or many people feel, they have to still the mind and quiet the mind. That's a practice that helps us quiet the mind. I don't want to confuse the two. Mindfulness is having the awareness in the present moment of which you are in. If your mind is active, it's not trying to thwart the activity. It's trying to shine a light on the activity of the mind. And if the mind is being negative, and if the mind is being critical, you have an awareness of the thoughts that you have. One of the things you don't want to do is to thwart the very things that you're thinking. You want to, as Socrates says, living the examined life is worth living. You want to shine a light on the thoughts that you have so that you can basically deconstruct a negative thought and then build a new thought in its place. And mindfulness is just basically having the awareness of our activities, our thoughts, our behaviors, so that we can transform them.
Okay. I'm actually really glad that you mentioned that, though, Ora, because I think a lot of people use the word mindfulness as a verb rather. I mean, they use it as the practice, mindfulness meditation. They don't think about it as just an adjective to describe a way of thinking. So when you say you're a mindfulness teacher, though, you do teach mindfulness meditation as part of your processes of self-discovery?
I do. I teach mindfulness meditation, which is a formal type of meditation, a sitting meditation, if you will, and then mindfulness out in the world, the informal application of having present moment awareness. So what that really means is that you don't just experience this for 20 minutes while you're sitting on a yoga mat or a meditation pillow. You become aware in all that you do. You can become aware that when you're having a conversation with somebody, you can be aware of when your mind starts to drift or you start to lose focus and bring yourself back into the present moment of which you're in so that you can have a quality discourse with somebody. reality, do you know?
Mm-hmm.
And the key really is to practice mindfulness as much as we possibly can in all the moments of our lives. I know that sounds like a tall order, but the more we strengthen that skill, the more we become mindful in all the moments of our life.
And that's very interesting. And it also sounds like that moment that you start asking that question, that important question, says who, is the moment that you have an opportunity to then stop the what's kind of distraction that happens in the fear and the kind of the running from the whatever that is that's on your mind, and just using the mindfulness practice to stay with that question, says who, and go deeper rather than fragmented, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. And really what you're doing, Margaret, is you're combining the two, which is very doable. And that would be mindfulness is being aware of what you might be telling yourself in the moment, and then maybe questioning it with says who, says who that I'm not lovable, says who, who is saying that I'm not. And you really want to have a mindful awareness of the thoughts that you're telling yourself, so that they don't wreak havoc in your life, and they don't make you feel good about yourself. We, especially in the area of which we're discussing today, the area of she evolves, she matures, and she's a journey of her aging experience. You want to be kind and loving and nurturing to yourself. So be mindful of the thoughts that you're telling yourself. Do you know?
Well, yeah, the irony of it is that women in over 60, well, women in general, I think, are very empathetic and kind to other people. And they're able to switch off and say that, say to someone who says, "You're not beautiful, gosh, you're fantastic," but they don't say it to themselves. There's that self-criticism that is almost like a reaction to, I don't know, it's just.
That's a very good point.
It's crazy.
It's so true. We can be so much kinder to others, but yet not apply the same kindness to ourselves. And that's another thing to be very aware of, that we are maybe quick to be so complimentary or kind, but then we have a hard time. Somebody just said to me recently, a woman, she says, I have a hard time receiving. It was very honest of her and very forthcoming to share. It's a lot easier, although it's a beautiful thing to give, and that saying, 'tis better to give than to receive, not necessarily so. You want the balance of being able to give, but you also need to learn how to cultivate receiving. They shouldn't be mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
Do you know?
I understand. No, it's really powerful. Now, I'm assuming your website is oranadrich.com, and you presumably, I think you have a YouTube channel, don't you, where you talk about this in a bit more detail. Do you want to talk a little bit about what resources you have available for people in case they want to follow up?
Well, if you go to my website, oranadrich.com, it's just chock full of so many things. It's articles and YouTubes and the events that I'm doing out in the world, the workshops that I'm doing, whether it's here in Los Angeles. I don't know how many listeners are here, but I do things, and part of the workshops that I do are not necessarily here in California. So, it really lists so many things that I think is very resourceful. So
okay.
Out the website.
A majority of our people are in the States. I mean, I'd say 70% of our community are in the United States. So there might be some people in LA that are interested. And I'm really happy that you have the chance to talk to us about how you can take self-reflection and, turn it into, when it slips into self-negativity or self-criticism, you can stop it. And you can make that an opportunity, to really thrive in your 60s and beyond.
Absolutely. And I use the word opportunity a lot, and I mention it in Live True, because the moments of our lives are an opportunity to learn something, even if they're difficult moments. There's a great learning in the moments of our lives. We want to rush them along. We want to hurry the moments along, except for the ones that bring us joy. So really, for me, in the way in which we apply mindfulness is into all the moments of our lives, even the difficult ones, and this practice really helps us embrace the moments, whatever they present to us, positive or negative. No,
I think that's a great insight. And there's a psychologist, I can't remember his name, but he wrote a book called The Force of Character. And he wrote about sleep, and how when you wake up in the middle of the night with a bad dream or with something that's haunting you, he says, get up and have tea with it. It's the opportunity to, whatever's come to you is a message to pay attention to.
Absolutely. And that's the most important thing. I also say that, sometimes the sweet spot is on the other side of difficult.
Yeah.
You know, and so we really need to be we need to be more gentle with ourselves. We're very hard on ourselves, you know.
I agree with you.
And with both of my books, I really encourage that, you know, as I offer up these, I think, very user-friendly techniques and skill sets. Go easy on yourself in the process, you know, learn how to love yourself better and know that you're in process, no matter what age you are.
I love it. Well, look, we're going to talk in another interview about authenticity and about becoming an authentic being through this process. And that's the gift, I think, of going through this process of saying says who and asking the questions at a deeper level. So let's stop here for now. But thank you so much. And I encourage you to go out and read this book, Live True, A Mindfulness Guide to Authenticity, and also Says Who. And thank you again, Ora, for being here. It's been fabulous to talk with you. If you enjoyed this video, please consider supporting me on Patreon. Our Patreon supporters help us to make a bigger difference in the lives of women over 60 all around the world. They get exclusive videos, live video shows, discounts, and much more. So please look for the link on this page. It is somewhere down here, up there. And join our tribe of women in our 60 and Me community who are actually making a big difference in the world, challenging aging stereotypes. So thank you so much for your support.